Hi everyone, welcome to another IELTS writing test, Task 1 Academic. Today we're looking at bar graphs. As always, guys, remember, watch these videos again, check them out again, read lots, get lots of feedback on your writing. I'll leave it there. Let's get a look at today's task. All right, everyone, remember, if you analyze the graph, if you organize your ideas, the grammar will be easy. Let's very quickly review what the IELTS band descriptors look like and what we want to look at to improve our writing score. First of all, task achievement. All right, this is something that a lot of people miss, a lot of teachers even miss in their IELTS Task 1 writing. Now, we're looking at getting a higher score, so let's look at these two things that get overlooked all the time. The first one here, for an 8, presents, highlights, illustrates key features and bullet points clearly and appropriately. Today, you will see how to do this. If you're trying, if a 7 is good enough, you're still trying to do the same thing, right? It says here, clearly present and highlight key features. So we're going to be looking at that, but could be more fully extended. It also says here, provides a clear overview of trends or differences. All right, we'll be looking at that as well. Now, the one I present you is going to be going for this, presenting and highlighting and extending appropriately. A couple of tips to do that. Remember, support trends with data. Does it increase? Then give the data. Does it decrease? Then give the data. Also important, don't be excessive with the data. You don't have to mention every single little change. Now remember, there's no right or wrong for how you do this, but you want to make sure you're making clear decisions about what information to include. Moving on to cohesion. All right, are you organizing your ideas logically? Does it make sense how you're presenting the information? Managing aspects of cohesion. Does each sentence connect to the next one clearly? And paragraphing, that one's pretty straightforward. That's for the 8. For the 7, quite similar. Logical organization, clear progression. All right. Again, I'll be aiming to show you how to pull off an 8, but even if you do that with a little bit of difficulty, you'll be all right for that 7. Moving on to grammar. For the 8, it says here, uses a wide range of structures, different grammatical structures. That's important. For a 7 down here, it says, uses a variety of complex structures. This writing that I present to you will be aiming for the 8. And of course, a lot more of it has to do with accuracy. All right. Now, accuracy in grammar is challenging. It's a bit more difficult. Are your sentences correct? That's where you need a teacher, someone you trust to take a look at your writing, identify the mistakes, and then you need to take that time to fix those mistakes. Now, before we get into the graph, here are my tips. This is what I tell my students to do when preparing. It gets excellent results. First, analyze the graph and make notes. That is so important. 5 minutes. Now, I know a lot of teachers love to take 2 minutes quickly, then start writing. If you have a good understanding of the data in the graph and you've organized your ideas, 15 minutes is more than enough time. I cannot tell you how many times a student will start writing immediately, and 20 minutes, they're not finished. 30 minutes, they're not finished. If you understand the data, this will be so much easier. That's what I love about academic task 1 in writing. Even if your grammar isn't super correct, if you're organized and you understand the data, you'll be fine. It's great. Then pay attention to that data. Does anything increase or decrease by 50% or 100%? Does it double? Does it triple? This is important. Then you've got 15 minutes, right. All right, let's take a look at this graph. The following chart shows how many passengers come through 3 different New York airports over a 6-year period. All right, so we've got 3 airports, JFK, LaGuardia, and Newark. All right, so you can see we've got 6 different years here, and you know what? Take 5 minutes, press pause, and after 5 minutes, we'll take a look at my notes and how I plan to organize. Press pause. All right, I trust you. I know you took a careful look at the data and you've made notes that look just like mine, maybe better than mine. Now, I might not include this much data in my notes, this much writing in my notes. This is just so that you can see what I'm thinking about when I look at the data. The first thing I did was I looked at the first year, 1995, and 2000. And what did I see? I saw that the volume doubles. So it's roughly 76 million here, and by 2000, it's 153. So it slightly more than doubles, and I want to make sure that I've spotted that. It happens all the time. So watch out for that. How has it changed over the 2 years? Usually, there's a big change. Maybe, it changes and then it comes back to the same level. That's fine. But you want to make sure you've seen what's the beginning number and what's the end number. Then we look individually at the airports. JFK, varying growth. All right. So it starts at 26 million. All right, JFK, there it is. JFK is there, and it rises. All right, great. I don't want to say double, but maybe it nearly doubles in 2 years. Then it has a drop. All right, it comes down here to about 31 in 2 years, and then it ends up here at about 42. Not much else to say there. Sorry, I've written 43 in my notes. So it drops down to 31, rises to 43. All right. So it increases quite a bit, possibly about a third, but in this case, I don't think that's important. Then I move on to LaGuardia, and you can see here it is generally the busiest. In every year but one, it's the busiest airport, and it shows very consistent growth. So we've got here generally the busiest. It starts at 35, grows consistently, even though it kind of slows down a bit, still consistent. It hits 68 million, with 2 I's. It hits 68 million, nearly doubling. All right? So it goes from 35 to 68. I'm going to call that nearly double. Again, you don't have to be super, super precise. So these words like nearly, roughly, approximately can be very helpful. All right, moving on to the last one, Newark. Now, Newark shows the most growth. Always look for that. It's not the biggest, but it grows the most. And it's quite consistent growth. So it starts here in 1995 at about 15, and then it more than doubles by 1997. So you can see here it's about 39, more than double. It's not close to triple, so I wouldn't use that reference here. And then it finishes at 42 million. So that's almost 3 times the growth. If it hits 45, that's huge. That's tripling its growth. And so keep that in mind. Yes, LaGuardia doubles. That's big. However, Newark shows more relative growth. All right? Anyone who's familiar with investing and the stock market, you know that Newark is potentially the better value. So I've even got the grammar here that you're going to see possibly later. Despite being the smallest, it showed the most growth. Let's take a look at a sample. All right, here we go. So first of all, I haven't made a lot of changes to the first sentence. I know a lot of teachers tell you to paraphrase it very carefully. I just say quickly, 10 seconds, copy it, maybe make a few changes. It doesn't matter. Don't spend a lot of time thinking about this part of the test. Write it down, then overall. Overall, the volume of passengers doubles, all right, across all 3, and LaGuardia is generally the busiest of the 3. Then, very simple. I've got 3 paragraphs, one for LaGuardia, one for JFK, and one for Newark. LaGuardia was consistently the busiest airport and showed noticeable growth. That's it. That paragraph is done. Everything I say now is going to support that piece of information. Now I give the data. In 1995, it had 35 million passengers. Full stop. All right, past tense. This number, this is the key point for cohesion. All right, this number, now I've connected those two sentences. The logic is there. The examiner reading your writing gets excited. They're happy because they're reading good writing. This number grew consistently throughout the period. There's a piece of vocabulary to write down, and reached roughly 68 million by 2000, comma, nearly doubling over the 6 years. So that comma, ing, comma, nearly doubling over the 6 years. Now, you're right. There was 1 year it wasn't the busiest, and I decided to mention it here. You could mention it in the other paragraph that talks about, I think, JFK. Doesn't really matter. The only year it wasn't the busiest was in 1997, and you can see here I made a little mistake. Let me fix that. Boom, magic. The only year it wasn't the busiest was in 1997. Fun fact, that mistake in the test probably would not make a difference in your score. That is a non-systematic error. That's just a quick little mistake I made. All right, next, JFK showed varying growth. So here we have consistent, here we have varying growth throughout the period. After starting at roughly 26 million in 1995, comma, so again, I've done this in other videos, after ing, it grew sharply, comma, peaking at 48 million. So again, it's a beautiful piece of language. We've got a trend, it shows varying growth, then I have the data. 26 grew sharply, peaking at 48 million, trend data. Peaking, trend, data, 48. In this year, it was the airport with the heaviest traffic. So that, if you remember, this was the only year it wasn't the busiest. Here, in this year, it was the airport with the heaviest traffic. After this, so again, I've connected back to that sentence. It dropped, comma, falling to 31 million by 1999. Full stop. It finished the period at 43 million, comma, roughly 2/3 the volume of LaGuardia, the paragraph before. So now, not only is this one paragraph clear and cohesive, but this paragraph is now referencing the previous paragraph. So I've got cohesion between two paragraphs. Finally, let's move to Newark. Newark showed consistent growth, clear first sentence. This paragraph's about New York. Now I'm going to show consistent growth. It started at 15 million in 1995, comma, showing noticeably lower traffic than the other two airports. So I've compared it to the previous two airports and the previous two paragraphs. I've compared and I've connected back to the other two paragraphs. And less than half the volume of LaGuardia. So again, I've given an even more detailed comparison. You don't have to be excessive. You don't need this comparison necessarily, but I thought it would fit well. I chose to include it. I made the decision. I'm going to put this in. That's the important thing. You choose to put data in or leave it out. This number grew consistently, and by 2000, had reached 42 million. So again, by had. Here we go. Despite still being the airport with the least volume, comma, it showed the most growth. If you watch a lot of these other videos I've put up on IELTS task writing part 1, you will see this a lot. Despite being small, it showed the most growth. And then I have a little bit of extra information here, nearly tripling the amount of traffic. There you go. That's 174 words, not including that first sentence here. So you've definitely got your word count, and you've got beautiful paragraphs, well organized and internally consistent. All right, everyone, that's all for today. Thank you for listening. Please like and subscribe, and I'll see you again soon with more IELTS writing.